In recent years, the BBC has come in for so much criticism, partly because the people managing the culture media and digital brief in the government have had a bee in their bonnet about taking down the BBC, but partly because the BBC has its own demons, and there may be reasons why these demons have been allowed to fester, but there has to come a point where the whistle is blown. The BBC has faced a recurring cycle of scandals. Widespread criticism, calls for reform, calls for the abolition of the licence fee. The latest episode with Hugh Edwards, who pleaded guilty to charges relating to making indecent images, possessing indecent images, receiving indecent images, underscores a troubling pattern within the organisation. Lisa Nandy, the new digital culture, media and sport minister, has suggested the BBC should consider reclaiming part of Edwards' pension payments after his conviction further highlights the need for a deeper examination of the corporation's handling of these crises, because it's not just one, there's 7 of them. And those are the ones which relate to high profile individuals, household names. The BBC's history is marred by these scandals. Jimmy Savile's notorious abuse, which came to light in 2012, the deceptive actions of Martin Bashir, who secured the interview with Princess Diana through dishonest means. The BBC has repeatedly found itself in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons, and these incidents raise fundamental questions about the corporation's internal culture and governance. In my own experience, the BBC and the people working for the BBC tended not to produce contracts until I had acquired some sort of reputation by being on a reality TV show, and I was recognised in the street, and suddenly there were contracts thrown at me. The former BBC journalist Robin Aitken argues that the organisation's stars are often treated as demigods, insulated from the consequences that might befall ordinary employees. This culture of invulnerability is not limited to on-screen talent, but extends to senior management, creating an environment where accountability is diluted. Miron Jones, another former BBC journalist, says that the atmosphere can prevent complaints from being taken seriously. This perpetuates the sense of impunity, the sense of self-righteousness. And the list of those found guilty of sexual misconduct while associated with the BBC is extensive, including figures like Rolf Harris, Stuart Hall, Chris Langham. Each case not only tarnishes the individual but erodes public trust in the BBC, an institution funded by the British public through the licence fee. And not paying the licence fee until very recently was a criminal act that could see people jailed. And yet, the BBC was parading this avalanche of filth. The revelations surrounding Hugh Edwards are particularly jarring, as they suggest the BBC continued to support him even after the serious allegations emerged and even after it was known that he'd been charged. Director General Tim Davie defended the BBC's actions, citing concerns for Edwards' health and the absence of charges at the time. But the justification rings hollow, as it appears to be part of a broader pattern of protecting high-profile individuals from the consequences of their actions. The question arises, what lessons has the BBC learned, if any? And while there have been efforts to address issues like staff mental health and workplace bullying, the organisation seems less adept at handling misconduct relating to serious offences. The repeated failures to act decisively and transparently in the face of these allegations points to a systemic problem within the corporation, and it needs to be sorted out. Dave Lee Travers, another one. Stuart Hall, Jonathan King. The list The list seems to be never ending. The moment you blink and there's another one. And Lisa Nandy's proposal to reclaim part of Edwards' pension could be seen as a step towards holding individuals accountable even after their tenure at the BBC has ended. It also raises broader questions about the financial and moral responsibility of public institutions when dealing with former employees who have been convicted of crimes. While such measures might seem harsh, they are a deterrent, and we've heard so much in the last few years about the role of a deterrent. A deterrent and a commitment by the BBC that it is serious about reform. Ultimately, the BBC's repeated entanglements with scandal reflect deeper issues of governance and culture. And Mark Borkowski, a PR expert, says that these scandals have become white swans rather than black swans because their troubling frequency undermines the corporation's credibility. It's not just one rare event. It's again and again and again. And there's another scandal today which has emerged. So we would think the BBC problem is all about the veteran broadcaster Hugh Edwards and the inappropriate conduct that he has now admitted guilt to. But oh no, in the middle of all this, 200 prominent figures from the British TV and film industry, including Leo Pearlman, Danny Cohen, Claudia Rosencrantz, have expressed concern about perceived anti-Semitism within the BBC. And they argue that the corporation has inadequately addressed complaints, particularly in the coverage of the Israel-Hamas conflict. They allege a double standard, asserting that anti-Semitic incidents are not treated with the same seriousness as those affecting other minorities. And this group has called for an urgent formal investigation by the BBC board into potential systemic anti-Semitism and bias, highlighting a perceived erosion of trust within the British Jewish community. This is serious, one thing after another. It's not just that the BBC is down and now being battered from all sides. It's that the BBC has constructed its own rod for its own back. This hauteur, this contempt for anyone outside the system. For the BBC to regain public trust, it needs not only to promise to learn lessons, but also to demonstrate a willingness to enact meaningful change. Only then can it hope to break the cycle of scandal and restore its reputation as a trustworthy public broadcaster.